Did you lock the door? Are you sure? And that thing watching you? Are you certain it's outside? If you can sleep after hearing these stories, consider yourself lucky. But if something in the darkness is staring back at you, it's already too late now. Subscribe and like, because once you step into this world, there's no turning back. I am Mr.BlackDread, and tonight, the darkness calls for you. 3. The Girl in the Attic. A terrifying encounter with the unseen. Bill had inherited an old house from his grandmother, a massive Victorian home that had been in the family for generations. He wasn't thrilled about moving in, but financially, it made sense. The first time he heard footsteps coming from the attic, he brushed it off as the house settling, but then he started hearing them every night. One evening, fed up with the noises, he decided to check it out. He climbed the creaky attic ladder and shined his flashlight into the darkness. At first, he saw nothing, just dusty furniture and cobwebs. But then a whisper, "Help me." Bill's blood ran cold. The voice was small, fragile, a child's voice. He followed the sound until he saw an old wooden chest in the corner. Trembling, he opened it. Inside, he found a doll, old and rotting, with black, empty eyes. The whisper came again, "Help me." That was when the attic door slammed shut. Bill dropped the doll and scrambled to open the door, but it wouldn't budge. Behind him, something moved. Turning slowly, he saw a small figure in the shadows. A girl, no older than 7, with hollow eyes and a gaping mouth. She reached for him, her fingers unnaturally long, her face twisted in agony. Just as her hand touched his shoulder, the attic door flew open. Bill tumbled down the ladder and ran out of the house, never looking back. Later, he researched the house's history and discovered a horrifying secret. In 1893, a little girl had been locked in that attic by her abusive parents. She had died, there trapped in darkness, screaming for help. Bill moved out, but the new owners soon reported strange noises, and sometimes, late at night, neighbors swear they see a small figure staring down at them from the attic window. 2. The Reflection That Wasn't Me. A haunting mirror story. Julius had always been skeptical about the supernatural, so when he found an old ornate mirror at an antique shop, he didn't think twice about buying it. The shopkeeper warned him, but Julius laughed it off. The first time he noticed something was off, he had just finished brushing his teeth. As he turned away, his reflection didn't move right away. It was subtle, barely noticeable. Maybe he was just tired, but then it got worse. One evening, as he sat on his bed scrolling through his phone, he glanced at the mirror across the room. His reflection was standing up, staring at him. Julius bolted upright, heart pounding. The reflection didn't match his movements. He raised his hand. The reflection didn't. Instead, it smiled. That was when Julius ran out of the house and refused to go back inside alone. A friend came over to help him remove the mirror. They wrapped it in a blanket and carried it to the backyard to destroy it. But when they unwrapped it, the mirror was empty. No reflection, just blackness. Suddenly, Julius felt a burning pain on his chest. He ripped open his shirt. His reflection was clawing its way out of him, scratches appearing on his skin, as if unseen hands were tearing at his flesh. He grabbed a sledgehammer and smashed the mirror into pieces. The moment it shattered, the pain stopped. Julius moved out the next day. He never found all the mirror shards, but sometimes, when he passes a reflective surface, he sees something that shouldn't be there. A shadow of himself, still watching, still waiting. 1. The Man in the Vents. A paranormal stalker story. Tommy had just moved into a new apartment in Chicago. It wasn't anything fancy, just a small, affordable one-bedroom unit in an old building. The previous tenant had moved out suddenly, but the landlord didn't offer any details. The first few nights were uneventful, but on the fourth night, Tommy began hearing strange noises, soft scratches, like nails dragging against metal. It seemed to come from the air vents. He assumed it was just rats, or maybe a bird stuck somewhere. Then the whispers began. At first they were almost imperceptible, just a faint murmur when the AC turned on. But soon, he started hearing distinct words. Tommy, ... I see you, he convinced himself. It was just his mind playing tricks on him. But one night, as he lay in bed, he noticed the vent cover was slightly ajar. He stared at it, heart pounding. Then movement. A single, glassy eye peered through the slats. Tommy screamed and jumped out of bed, grabbing his phone. He called the police, but by the time they arrived, there was no sign of anyone. The vent was empty. The landlord refused to believe him, insisting it was his imagination. Determined to prove he wasn't crazy, Tommy set up his phone to record overnight. When he checked the footage the next morning, his blood ran cold. At exactly 3:12 a.m., the vent cover slid open, and a pair of hands reached out. A thin skeletal figure crawled out, watching him sleep for over an hour before slithering back inside. Tommy moved out the same day. Weeks later, he learned the horrifying truth. The previous tenant had also reported noises in the vents before disappearing. His body was never found, and the worst part, that apartment is still being rented. The stories are over, but the night is just beginning. Did that shadow move? Did you really hear that sound? Or was it just your imagination? I am Mr.BlackDread, and we will meet again in the next story, if you're still here. And remember, everyone becomes a story someday. If you don't want yours to be told, subscribe.